What is stopping you from really shining your light and getting out there with your divine purpose and making an impact in the world? Today we have Mark Stinson, who has 30 years as a career as a marketing professional. He's now focusing on conscious business to support more leaders of change to get out there in the world and really shine your light. And he's going to talk about applying the 7 chakras to align your spiritual and business purpose. So hope you join us to find out more.
Soul Nectar Show, the Soul Nectar Show. You're invited, delighted to discover who you are. Anything is possible if you believe. So join us on this beautiful journey. Soul Nectar Show, Soul Nectar Show.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire together and we share our stories of connection to that which is greater than us, the big mystery beyond the veil, to those synchronistic moments that lead us inexorably to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. I'm your host, Kerri Hummingbird, and I love to have these conversations week after week. On the show, we've been doing it about 9 years now, believe it or not, for weekly shows. Hope that you have enjoyed all of these conversations. And this week, we're going to be focusing on your business and your purpose a little bit. For those of you who are spiritual practitioners, who are here for a greater purpose, who have some desire to make a positive change in the world, you're going to enjoy our conversation with Mark Stinson, who is somebody who's had a 30-year career as a marketing professional and has chosen recently to focus on conscious businesses who are forming new causes to benefit the world, because we all at some point want to be involved in making the world a better place and leaving a legacy of goodness. His podcast is Your World of Creativity, and that features impact players who are influencing beneficial change. And I got to be on there, so really excited, returning the favor over here. He's got another podcast, 5 Minutes of Peace. Couldn't we all use 5 minutes of peace? I think so, in this crazy, hectic world that we're living in. So he's got 5 Minutes of Peace podcast, where he offers listeners inspiration to access peace within themselves. And that's a beautiful thing. So we're going to talk today about Mark, your journey. And I know that you wanted to talk about how you've applied the 7 chakras to your business, right? So how can the 7 chakras in our bodies, in our spiritual experience, in our embodied human experience, be used for our business, and how we can apply that spiritually and in business with our purpose. But first, I just kind of want to welcome you to the show. So welcome, Mark, to the show.
Well, Kerri, it's great to be with you. And I love and am inspired just by the name of the show. This idea of nectar, is certainly nourishment and, feeding the soul for sure. But I think about the energy, that brings too. So not just pure nourishment for sustenance, but to energize us. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, soul nectar. It's that stuff that lights you up, right?
You got
That's
it.
the whole point. And so tell us, like, how did you get started on this consciousness kick? Because you were a marketing professional, so I'm assuming that you were in business world and this kind of stuff, but then at some point you had a awakening within yourself and you decided you wanted to take this new direction. So tell us more about that. What was that awakening like?
Yes, for sure. Well, beginning in the 80s and then the 90s, it was business, 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 climb that corporate ladder, deliver those shareholder values, get that P&L statement looking just right, grow the business, get the clients, acquire, acquire, acquire. And there's a lot of energy. And yet I knew that some of that personal development, and the books and tapes and all the motivational speakers. But slowly but surely, I noticed not only a sense in myself, but just a different energy in the world as we moved into some new consciousness, that it wasn't just motivation for, burn the candle at both ends sake, but it was motivation to bring something more to the business, bring something more purposeful and more valuable than just the profit. Now, we're in business, so we have to deliver the value. And clients want, growth and they want prosperity and so forth. But at the same time, you want to feel like you're doing something more and that there's a people piece, that there's a cause piece. And that's what I began to try to integrate not only into my own practice, but as people came to me and said, hey, we want to do good and we want to do well. How do we put those two things together? And so I began to explore those techniques and those methods to see what I could do about that.
Yeah, we want to do good and we want to do well. So it's like we want to have a business that helps people, that makes the world a better place. And we don't want to go broke while doing it. We want to also benefit from prosperity, right? And
That's right.
so, what are some of the things that you're most passionate about when you help people?
Well, for sure, this idea of being heard. What I've found in so many of the markets that I've had a chance to be in, whether it's financial services, whether it's healthcare, whether it's retail, in a lot of market research I've done, one of the common themes that I heard from many business owners, but also their customers, was customers want to be heard. And they didn't really feel like they were being appreciated. They felt like they were, somewhat of a commodity, or they were, the companies were making money on their backs, or what have you. And especially in healthcare and pharmaceuticals and medical devices, all these kind of medical treatments, the more we thought of people as, for example, we thought of them as a patient, not a person. And so, people wanted to be heard. And I just kept hearing this theme over and over. So one of the things that I continued to consult my clients on was how to be better listeners. And not just better listeners, meaning I heard the exact words you said, or I wrote down exactly what you wanted, or I took your order, but rather that empathetic, hearing. Do you get what I mean? Do you get what I feel? And now I can't say that I was always the perfect empathetic or, feeling listener because of what I said. It was business, business, business. But I've tried to incorporate that more and more into my practice and more into maybe my consciousness because people need to be heard, and both the clients and the customers they work with, I'm a facilitator in that listening.
Yeah, because marketing is the thing that connects the service provider with someone who could benefit from that service, right? And but sometimes the people that could benefit from the service don't know why they would want the service. And the practitioner knows why they need it, why it would help them, but they don't necessarily think or connect those dots or understand. So how do you help bridge that gap? How do you help the practitioner communicate to working with the person who's, needs the service but doesn't know they need it?
Well, so true. And if I could bring an analogy here, we've all been in a situation at a restaurant where we say, "What's good here?" I've never been here. What's a favorite? And if the service person is truly in service, they will tell you the truth. Oh, don't get the bookbinder soup. It's not that good. Get the clam chowder instead. Or, we really don't recommend that you get the fish well done. If I want to be in service to you, I'm going to tell you maybe not what you want to hear, but what you need to hear, maybe what you would prefer, because they truly are in service. So I think about that in many practices. Now, whether you're a Reiki practitioner or a massage therapist or a tarot reader or a accountant. You want to have a conscious practice where you're truly in service to your clients. And that may be, I don't really have the best thing for you, or you're not in a good place to receive my treatment right now, or maybe there's another practitioner that you might prefer. But I think by taking a customer point of view, a client point of view, you're able to share with them what service you have to offer and how you can be of service, not just what you have to sell, not just what your hourly rate is. And, here's my bullet point of, here's all the things that you should know about my practice, but rather, here's a problem that I could solve for you.
Yeah, and I think having that, being able to listen, right? Listen to the environment that you're in, that you find yourself in as a practitioner, you might have to remember back to before you knew all the things that you know, right? Because we get kind of off on some track as a spiritual person, and then we forget that we didn't know all that stuff just 5 years ago or 10 years ago. We didn't know all those things. And so then we have to kind of try to remember who we used to be, right? Before we knew all this stuff that we know that's so great. But like, how do we connect with somebody, previous to that?
So true. So true. I mean, and again, across many practices and many markets and many, industries, this kind of insider knowledge, and insider lingo. I mean, how many websites have you ever pulled up and you said, I don't understand a word they're saying?
I'm
It
sure
also,
people say that about me all the
I
time because
know.
I got way off on my mystical journey and I'm like, Rainbow Warriors. And they're like,
Yes.
I don't know what that means. So, when
Well, and whether it's, rainbows and butterflies, or it's candles and oracles and angels and everything else. But it could just as well be, again, marketing. It could be the apothecary. It could be, any kind of practice. And I keep bringing up things like accounting and law. And, there's so many other services that people do need. And and their care of the environment, care of the world, care of people, you know, but put it in plain language so that we can all benefit from it.
yeah, I think there's this sneaky way that I noticed in myself of being purposefully ununderstandable, except to people that only would already know what I'm talking about, and as a way of avoiding people who don't yet know. And if you're really honest with yourself, people, like probably you're doing a little bit of that too, because there could be a feeling of discomfort, once you've kind of made your own journey to a better place. There can be a feeling of discomfort revisiting, coming back into these older places where we started the journey. But the journey always has a return. If you know the hero's journey, you go, to around here to you find a teacher, and then you go to the underworld and you explore all of your stuff, and then you learn a bunch of really cool stuff and you find solutions. And then the last part is the return. You go back to where you started and you tell everybody what you found out. That's the part so many people that take this spiritual journey, they're like scared to do that, because they know how, or they think they know how judgmental maybe they would be received. But don't we, if we're really talking about consciousness, we're talking about making an influence in the world, making the world a better place, then we've got to be able to be willing to have that conversation with anyone in any place, right, that we might encounter. Because
Absolutely.
otherwise, how are you going to spread consciousness if you won't talk about it?
Right. And you were good enough to mention my podcast, Your World of Creativity. And I'll merge this with a thought about the chakras as we were discussing.
Yeah.
But the, so many people, they do get off on, maybe the tangent of their spiritual journey or their practice, or if you could only understand the high language that sometimes we like to use around these things. But what I found, so many of the creative practitioners I talk to who have developed their own signature technique, their own signature style. There's a way of their painting, there's a way of their writing, there's a way of their music. This is the way they approach it. And I was able to maybe connect that. And one of my mentors helped me see how that connected to the root chakra, that the very foundation and the root of what you do needs to be simplified. And so before we go off, writing the flowery language, let's define, and I've tried to whittle it down to some plain template kind of things. If you could fill in the blanks that say, what is it that I do? What is it? What does it do? How is it different? And what makes that difference relevant, and how do you use it? Let's get down to the brass tacks of it all. And then I tell so many people as they're starting their own practices, sometimes it's just, how do you contact me? How do I find out more about you? Where's the contact page on your website? How do I book an
That's what I was
appointment?
talking about. So many spiritual people are like, I'm doing what I'm doing and I want to help you, but only if you can figure out how to get in touch with me. Because,
Yes.
like, that means God sent you. And if, I really don't want to be that available. There is that kind of like, I don't want regular people. But we're here to serve whoever is ready, right? Like, and we're here to offer a service. We don't want to be, if we're conscious, we're not being exclusive, right? We're being inclusive. So
That's
we
right.
do have to open ourselves. That root chakra can get pretty tight, right? Like it's
Well,
like,
and like you said, how do I contact and book an appointment? I mean, literally,
how
where's
do
your
I book
calendar
an appointment?
page? And then how do I pay you? Well, I always laugh with my wife. There's a post office not far from us, and it's not a main branch by any stretch. It's a kind of a satellite little post office. But they have this sign out front. Their hours are from 9 to 10. Then they have a coffee break from 10 to 11. Then they're open from 11 to 12:30. And then they have lunch from 12:30 to 1:15. I mean, not 1 or 1:15. Then they're open from 1:15 to 3. Then I mean, oh my gosh, when is this post office open? And they do not make it easy. So
Yeah. And if we don't make it easy, then we're really kind of blocking that root
totally.
connection, right? That
Yeah.
so the root for you is really being clear about in clear language the service you provide, what it is that you're offering, that the gift that you're available to give to others, and what it costs, and how do you sign up for this thing, and
Yes.
how do I find out more about it? Like basic stuff, right?
Some real basics. And I only say that because if I compare and contrast now a little bit, we conscious practitioners often start with maybe the heart chakra. I really feel for the people and I really have compassion. And if you think about that word, calm and passion, I want to communicate my passion. And we're really good at that part. And all those feeling words start oozing out. Or we focus on that sacral chakra, the creativity, the art, the music, all the ways to express myself. And then it's interesting, the expression of that sacral chakra doesn't come out the throat chakra. You got to get the word out. And people go, well, I don't want to be on social media, or I don't want to really spend a lot of time on my blog, or I'm really not comfortable on YouTube because I don't like my camera and I don't like the way my hair looks, or I don't like my background. And so they plug up their throat chakra. And literally, like we said, if you don't get the word out, a tree fell in the woods and nobody heard it. And your tree of service is out there, but nobody knows about it. So what I'm not saying, oh, I got to be on Facebook or, oh, TikTok, if there is a TikTok by the time yeah,
If it still exists.
if it still exists, but I mean, if you've got to get comfortable with your throat chakra somewhere, somehow, and say, I need to share my story.
And doesn't that have to do with your will center and your confidence in yourself? Like you're knowing that, this has been a big part of my journey, with being a healer and a full-time healer. It's not an easy thing to have done, in
Yes.
our current world, right? And the way that I had to move through that was to know, like I know my own experience, and then as I was working with clients, really listen, listen for what they would say, because they were usually quite appreciative of the way that the healing transformed their lives. So, like, listen to that, write those things down for myself, if no one else, to remind myself, and for a long time to go, yes, this is helping people, this is transforming lives. And then that builds to bringing more people in. But that takes every step along the way is that will center going, I'm going to be courageous and I'm going to get out there and I'm going to speak about this and I'm going to practice sharing with people, like the ephemeral thing that happens, making the invisible visible with my words. Like, this is what people say when they work with me. This is what they experience from people's mouths, other people that said what they experienced. Is that a
Yeah.
lot what you go through with people?
Oh, completely. And I love the way, you call it the will center. People have that gut feeling, that confidence right in their sort of abdomen area. And that's why that you've got to have the strong center. And so many people, again, it's like sometimes I use that to remind people that yes, it's about confidence, but maybe it's also about contingency thinking. That, you're strong enough to say, what if nobody listens to my podcast? What if nobody buys my book? What if nobody reads my blog? What if I didn't, get that article approved? I was working with a coaching client over the holidays, and she had submitted an article to one of her industry journals. And it's like they didn't get back to me. I just know they hate it. It's like, well, they didn't hate it. They're on holiday. And sure enough, January 4th, they got back and they said, we approve your article. It's going to run. And, yes, we'll do some judicious editing, but we love it and it'll be just fine. So you had to have that strength of confidence in that will center to know that if you need to make some changes, if you need to, make some contingency plans. But I know even for myself, I think I've written 7 books or something like that. And somebody said, oh, you must be making all these great royalties on this book and you must be, getting checks all the time. It's like, I think I made $44 last quarter. And that would be a lot. $44, I can go out to eat, one night. But it just you still go back to the throat chakra. You find a way to get your message out.
Yeah, and you have to learn to trust yourself, and you've got to learn to know that, yeah, a lot of spiritual things and conscious things are things that are kind of new to a lot of people, and so it's unfamiliar. They may not know what you're talking about, right? And so you do have to get good at explaining what the benefits are. I know that when I go into this, sometimes I do the mistake that many tech companies do, is that they just talk about the feature, and like we have this feature and that feature and this other feature. And like you said, like this is the pricing and this is the name of the service. But like people are still like, why do I need it? Like
Right.
and so that's the part that can be harder for us to talk about because that is our translation, right? We have to be able to translate within ourselves, like what was the impetus for me trying this thing and what was the benefit I got. And it starts with us, right? Really knowing what is it that we are talking about. These things can be, just from experience, can be hard to nail down in a concrete kind of left brain way.
No question. And as long as we're kind of moving up the chakras, I think now we can go to the third eye,
Yep.
and think about how you see from the clients, from the customer's point of view. And yes, there's intuition and all the things. And I become fascinated with this pineal gland that's behind the third eye, that there's a really physical, anatomical explanation for this. So I'm reading more and more about that these days. But just as you think about the connection between, your gut feel and the third eye being intuitive, and that's why that connection works. And you kind of go back and forth between how does my gut feel about this and what am I seeing and feeling? So there's a definite third eye component to these conscious practices. And then I will say, going back to the pricing and the charging and how you work with, and even the clients that you take and won't take, there is a, crown chakra connection here. That if you think that this is a sending, but it's also a receiving channel, that your crown chakra is, you want to get messages from the universe. You want to hear from your spiritual guides. You want to hear from your consciousness. Um, and so there's a two-way channel going on there. But I always translate that to then the mission of your practice. Now, so many businesses like to start with a mission statement, and sometimes, you see these on the wall of a company or you see them on the website, and then they never talk about them again, because they went on a retreat and they wrote a mission statement, and it's very beautiful and it's very poetic, but it needs to have some basis in reality. But I always say, from a mission standpoint, do you put your money where your mission is? Not necessarily your mouth, but your mission. So are you, giving to causes that you believe in? Do you have a 5% of my profits go to such and such a cause? Or I have a buy one, give one, or I have a charitable program that I like to provide service to, maybe in an in-kind way. So how do we put our money where our mission is in business?
Yeah, I like that. And the whole time you've been talking, I've been sitting here going, this is kind of like at the bigger level, the integration of the masculine and feminine, like what we would call masculine and feminine, right? I mean, I know it's so great if we could find out different ways of talking about it. I know that my teacher, Heather Ashamara, for a long time, she has taught warrior goddess, warrior being
Mm,
those action oriented, those discipline and structure and oriented things, and then the feminine, the goddess. And so there's these two energies, it's like if you don't have both operating together, then you're missing a lot, so like if you have all the flowery and all the, you're really good at the energy and you're really good at the creativity and you're really in touch with your heart and with people and all this, you might attract people and you might do okay, but not as good as if you had some structure and some discipline and some accountability and some ideas and plans and goals and but if you have too much of this stuff, right, then you don't have this other stuff, this feminine stuff, then you're sort of pushing and shoving this thing forward and convincing people of it, but then when they have it, they may not really, in the summation of it might go, that was weird, or I'm
right.
not, they just talked over me and tried to convince me to do that thing. So I actually had somebody do that to me the other day. That's why I'm saying it. It was like this person wanted to come on my show and I was like, you just basically spent all this time talking over me about how I've already figured out everything, and whatever I'm doing is not worth anything. Why would I have you on my show exactly?
Yes, this is,
You
this
didn't
is
listen
like
to anything I had to say.
yeah. Well,
So
there
there's the
were
relatability, right? So we have to have both sides working.
totally. And I love the thought that there might be sides or, there's overlapping a Venn diagram or there's left brain and right brain. I had two guests on the podcast on your world of creativity. One was a neuroscience guy, and I was asking him about this left brain, right brain kind of thing that, creative people always think they're more right brain and they sort of sometimes dismiss or don't want to go to the left brain data and science and all of these things. And he said, what's interesting, if you look at it anatomically, it's not an either or. What happens in the true creativity is that where those two hemispheres of the brain connect, and there's that little valley, if you ever look at, the illustrations of the brain, that the corpus callosum, he calls it, that's where true creativity happens.
It's in the center.
That these synapses are sharing and firing. And that's why there was another guest, Marty Johnson, and he talked about that he goes back and forth. He goes, I'm going to spend a couple hours just diving into the facts, reading the books, looking at my references, looking at the source material. Then I'm going to bounce over here and I might do some photography. I might do some artwork. I might do some music. I might play, some records. But, and then, it's that back and forth. And so he was almost forcing the creativity into that valley or that corpus callosum. So I like the fact of what you're talking about. The same thing would apply with masculine and feminine, warrior and goddess. How do we merge them? How do we go back and forth and find those connections?
Yeah, and so the seven chakras is another way, just like you shared with us, powerful way of looking at our connection. Like, are we balanced? Are we balanced? Are we working with the root? Are we working with our connection with our environment? Are we interconnected? Or are we curled up in a ball trying not to be seen? Because that also happens. Um, are we being creative? And then at creativity, you have a bunch of beautiful visions, but then if you don't take action on them with your will center, what's the good of it? If you
There you
haven't
go.
actually taken an action towards it, then it's not probably going to happen, and it's not
Yes.
enough to just say, "Oh, I am creating this beautiful thing, so I am," mantra. That's nice. You have to actually get out there and mingle, right? And meet the people that would be interested in your stuff. I tell this to myself all the time, Kerri, get your
Yes.
ass out of the house.
Let's go talk to some humans.
Let's
But
go mingle.
and in my little classes, whether they be, full workshops or whether they be one-on-one coaching, I take people through a bit of a, call it a meditation, but certainly a guided imagery where we start with the, root chakra and work our way up. But I was also fascinated to read one book was saying, we think sometimes as chakras, as, there's a place, feel it in your body or feel it, like there's a crystal that aligns with it, or there's a color that aligns with it, or a, body part or so forth. But this book was describing it as a 360 energy going around your body. And that if we think about it as energy, and then we're moving up the body and it's surrounding your heart, it's surrounding your throat, it's going around your forehead, rather than simply a static location, that there's a circular motion. I think that gives a lot of, well, energy, if I could just keep reiterating the word that, there's this forward momentum. We're breaking through, we're getting out, literally and physically out of the house, out of just, our static spot.
Yeah, and it has to do with because that's what creates movement. Our energy is more movement and then more interaction, right? So everything is relational to everything else. So if we're a practitioner, then we have to be relational to the people that we serve. We've got to be able to relate to our contexts and our environments, right? And if we get too heavily mired in one area over another, then we're not really, we're losing some part of that equation. There is this constant motion kind of feeling to it, to keep things, the river kind of moving. And the everything sort of happening is that firing that happens when people meet or when you have a conversation.
Yes. And I think, hey, as long as we're talking about the metaphysical, I think it's that energy that sends the messages, that sends the energy out into the universe. And if you're going to use the law of attraction, for example, or if you're going to use any of the, spiritual guidance that we've gotten in these tools, um, then we've got to have that energy, the particles of your ideas and your you're attracting and you're saying, I want people to know that I have this business. I want people to know that I have this service offering. And that's all part of it.
Yeah. And there, I also realized at one point, I don't know if you ever had this thought, but that simply by having the conversation, let's say I meet somebody like you and we go to a coffee shop and there's a bunch of people around, but they're not necessarily listening directly to what I'm saying, but energetically, they're connected with the conversation that we're having and we're connected with the conversations that they're having because there's like this consciousness bubble happening in that whole space that, even by having a conversation in a public area can cause these connections to start to happen through this field of interconnectivity that's already in place. And so just by putting yourself in different places, even if you didn't talk to the other people in the environment, but you just met somebody and had a conversation, you'd be activating this connectivity web that would then eventually, out of some weird way, bring those people right to you, even though you never had a conversation with their friend, but they just somehow, through the ethers, on Facebook or whatever, found you.
And I love the word activation that you used. I use it quite often because I do think we're activating these ideas. And I've had many mentors say that if you have this idea, you don't even have to go to the coffee shop and have another conversation. You had the idea. And so it's already been energized and activated. And if you don't act on it, someone else will.
Yeah,
How
because
many
now it's been created.
how many times have you said, "Oh, I had that idea 5 years ago. Look, they stole my idea." They didn't steal it.
No, you just didn't act on it.
You put it out there and they wrote that book or they did that TV show or they invented that product and they went with it. And so, you know, you act on your ideas is the moral of that story.
Exactly. Like write the song if you hear the song, sing it, record it, write it, do it. If
Yes,
you hear the book, write the book, connect with the book.
yes.
If you have an idea for a business, create it. This is where we are being encouraged strongly to stand up out of the victim posture, right? And go, no one's going to make it for you. So if you feel it in your heart, it is coming through you, then they're one who's got to stand up and go create that thing.
That's right. And that might be, yes, write the song, write the book. It could be run for office. It could be, start that business. All the things that we're talking about here about business and practices. Um, let's get it started. And I'm not one to tell people, quit that job, if you don't have another one. But if you've been saying, I've always wanted to do X, Y, or Z, then
What are you
you've
waiting
got
for?
they got to take the steps. And if you say, well, at least I'll take the baby steps. I have a friend, we laugh back and forth about micro movements. It's like, well, you got to take at least a micro movement to get it started, get off the dime. And, one step at a time.
It'll start building itself the more fun you're having doing it anyway.
Yes.
And, this is how a lot of people, when they hear this, when they hear my story, right? They hear a story of somebody who's done this, they go, wow, that's so inspiring. And it's like, yes. And it was because I just said yes. I just kept saying yes to the invitation. I wrote the book, the first book that came through, I wrote it. I said yes. I created that thing. It took me 2 years to write it. And then I put it out there. I published it. And the next one came through easy and it's been on the charts ever since. But these are the things that you just have to say yes to, even though, believe me, both times, all the times I've written my books, I've thought, people are going to think I'm crazy. Okay. Okay. Yeah, if you're doing something new, you guys, like you're doing something conscious that hasn't been done before and it's new, some people are going to look at you like you're crazy. Can you be okay with that?
So
Right? Can
good.
you just accept yourself that you're on a leading edge?
And I love that you say yes. I mean, a lot of people, especially since we talk about boundaries now, and saying no to things. And Chandra Rhimes had the year of no. I said no to everything, she said. No new TV shows, no new scripts, no new projects. And yet, look who's the most prolific, producer, writer, and everything else. She works with everyone and does everything. I had a chance to work with Sark, and you may remember her as the Succulent Wild Woman author, all those great colorful books. She had a whole thing, hey, it's a world of yes. And why don't you just, for a little bit of time, say yes to everything that comes your way? You know, do you want to come to this dance? Yes. Do you want to be on my podcast? Yes. You want to write a book together? Yes. And hey, step out there.
Those are ideas, right? Those are ideas and inspirations that came through both of those people, completely opposite on the spectrum, but they followed it and it ended up in an amazing place. So, I mean, we all have that, right? We have that opportunity, Mark, to follow that soul nectar you were talking about, to follow
Right.
that and to say yes to it and to follow whatever it is. And if it was mean to like say no to everything, okay, you said no to everything for a year and you notice what happens. If you said yes to everything for a year, what else would happen? So these are experiments, and we can let these experiments be our teacher. I love that.
Yes.
Powerful. So you said you teach classes. Do you have a link to share with people?
Yes, so I can share that. I do teach through my wife's Reiki practice. It's called the Peace Room here in Boise, and it's the Peace Room .love. So instead of .com, we have .love. And there's a page there with all the training classes and practices, and I teach a whole conscious business series. Some of that is how to start a business. Some of that is how to grow and market your business, also all the way to how to be a better guest on podcasts, because so many people say, I want to tell my story on podcasts, but how to write blogs, how to apply these chakras to your conscious practice. So I'd love to team up with people however you like.
It's beautiful. So it's the peaceroom.love. That'll be
Yes.
in the show notes below, everyone. So you can check it out. You can go look at the training and practices and things that are available on the website. And how is it working out for you? Are you enjoying your passion project, Mark? Are you enjoying merging all of your wisdom from all the traditional business into this passion, fulfillment, soul nectar-ish pursuit?
Yes. So what was the question? How is it?
Yeah, how are you enjoying it? That was a
Oh, okay.
long-winded question. Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
no. I wanted to make sure I had the essence of the question. I love it. And my happiness quotient, my joy quotient. People go, I have to go to work. I have to go to joy, and I have to go to peace, and I have to go to love, and to the extent I can do that, it's a great world.
That's awesome. Yeah, of course. What else is he going to say?
That's right.
That was a
No,
dorky question. Sorry about that, people.
no,
I'm
no,
still
it's all
recovering
good.
from my cold from last week. I've had a flu. That's my excuse, you guys. I have an excuse. I
Yeah,
have had a flu for a week and a half.
yeah.
But I could not resist in sharing the story of our friend Mark. Had such a great time on your podcast, The World of Creativity. You guys could check it out. You could see lots of other people who are also doing really amazing work in the world and making impact and influence through all the stuff that they're doing, and that's inspiring all by itself. So go check that out, the world your World of Creativity podcast. And I can't wait to find out, just like how, if you know what would be so great is if we could have some kind of like positive influence meter, and we could say how much positive influence did Mark create through his passion work, and then we would find out he created 900 billion units of passion.
Of happiness.
Yeah, if we could only like create a way to measure it. But I think it's the kind of thing you just have to know in your heart, isn't it?
It is. And I think if there's a injection or if there's an IV drip of this kind of peace and joy, then we could all use a dose.
Yeah, sign me up. Where's my, oh,
There you go.
yeah, I drink to that. So awesome work. Thank you so much. And we're gonna give people kisses now. So you talked about your wife doing Reiki. Well, we do Reiki kisses here and we give them out at the end of every episode. And so if you want to join me, you can. But thank you all for being here with us, for listening, for bringing your attention, your focus, your heart, your love. I hope that Mark has inspired you to just do it. Just go do the thing. Do the thing, everybody. Do the thing. That's your heart calling. And the world will be a better place as everyone's doing their thing. And so here come the kisses from encouragement. They come. We love you, and we'll see you next time on Soul Nectar Show. Bye for now, everyone.
If you found even one gold nugget in this episode of Soul Nectar Show, will you do us a favor? Will you subscribe, like, and share this episode? Maybe even write a comment and let us know what you thought about it. We really, really want to engage with you at a much deeper level. Let's be part of community together. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now. To dive in deeper to nourishing conversation, visit soulnectar.show.
Soul Nectar Show. Awaken, awake, Nectar Show. Take a sip from the drip of nectar from the source of who you are.